Nothing makes me happier than being in a room with coaches. It's my happy place. You all are for sure my good vibe tribe. My life purpose, my life calling is about working with coaches. And today I have this enormous task of talking to you about trust in 20 minutes, which is, it's not even possible to do. But to start, I want to share with you a really quick story from my coaching career. I coached college basketball for 15 years, mainly on a Division II level. And we were playing in this game, and we were running this play over and over and over and again. It kept working. And the play was called Iowa. And so I was thinking at halftime, we better change the name of the play because they're going to figure it out when we call Iowa now, the second half. So let's confuse the opponent by changing the name of the play. And little did I know we were going to confuse my team more than the opponent. So basically, when I went into halftime, I said, look, in the second half, every time we call a president's name, we're really running Iowa. Got it? President's name, Iowa. They're like, got it, coach. We're going to run president's name, Iowa. Got it. Go out the second half. First time down the court, I yell to my point guard, Trish, call a president. Well, Trish stops at half court, and you can just see her face goes blank. And the wheels are turning. And she cannot think of a president's name to save her life. And the rest of the teams are going, what's going on? What's going on? And then all of a sudden, Trish has this light bulb moment, and she screams out, Abraham! So 3 out of the 4 other players on the court figured out Lincoln. We're running a president. We're running Iowa. But my post player, who the whole play is geared around, is going, Abraham, who's Abraham? So they run around like the Keystone Cops, and my post player gets the ball, and she scores and gets an opportunity for a 3-point play. So I'm calling her over to the sideline. And I'm like, Sarah, what are you doing? We are running a president. She looks at me, she goes, Coach, I'll run whatever you want me to run, but can you tell me who in the heck is Abraham? So you can see that I made a lot of mistakes as a coach, and you can see why I didn't win 6 national championships. I never won a championship. My life has been dedicated to coaching coaches. And I want to just share this. I love this quote out of the book of Illusions by Richard Bach. And it says, we teach best what we most need to learn. And it's so true. It's been my entire life, is that as a young coach, I can tell you this. I did not struggle with the X's and O's of my sport, even though that story you might think differently. But in reality, I did not struggle with the X's and O's. I knew how to dribble, pass, shoot. I knew how to set up an offense, set up a defense. But my greatest struggles were around my own self-awareness, like Joe has talked so much about, but also the people aspect of the sport. I find it interesting that we do not train coaches in our country in the people skills of our sport. Communication, conflict, managing people, leading people, all those things that really, truly make you a great coach. So I've dedicated, my career has been doing programming for coaches. This is what I've done since 2003. It's my passion, it's my purpose, and really more than anything, I feel so called to it. And in 2014, I started True North Sports and the Assistant Coach Immersion Program. And what we did with the Assistant Coach Immersion Program is we brought 22 coaches. All of these programs, by the way, we bring coaches of all sports together. It's very unique like that. We're not separated by sport. We bring everybody to the classroom together because our profession of coaching is greater than the sport you coach. We believe that to bring all the coaches together, it's a great opportunity to cross-pollinate. So when we look at this, and this is where we're going to start talking about trust. These are the 22 coaches that are in my inaugural program last year. And I had this really crazy idea that I was going to go around the country and visit each one of these coaches at their school. I decided that Mama C is what they call me. Mama C was going on tour. And I went on tour and I visited every single one of them at their institutions. And there were several goals that I had with this tour. First and foremost, I want to develop a really deep relationship with any coach that's in our program, because that's part of my job. My job is to help them. I'm their advocate. So to be their advocate and to be their mentor, I have to get to know them on a deep level. So I met their families, their dogs, their partners, their AD, their coach. I met everybody in their life. All right? But the second reason I wanted to do is I wanted to get out there and have conversations with people in the coaching world. We have people from Averett University in Virginia all the way up to Ohio State and Notre Dame. So I want to know what's going on in all of these universities across the country in the coaching profession. I really wanted to know. I wanted to have those conversations. So I literally have had hundreds of conversations on this tour to this point. All right? So when I'm on tour, one of the interesting things that happen is a theme starts to emerge. And that theme was around trust issues. I mean, it's just everywhere you look. It shows up in so many different ways. So here are some of the ways that I experienced it at these different universities. Personal relationships. The coaches are struggling in their own very personal relationships with their parents, their significant others. All right? Their university, there's lots of distrust in a university or how they view the athletics department. With their teams, the teams don't trust the coach doesn't trust the team. Their athletic director, this is a big one for a lot of people. For maybe some of you all, your principal. Athletics overall, I could do a whole session on this. I believe that right now we have a culture of distrust on the collegiate level primarily, because coaches feel expendable. If they don't win, they'll just get rid of you, they'll replace you, we'll just get another coach. And there's no sense of development. No one's trying to develop coaches, which blows my mind. All right? And so what happens, I believe, that trickles down to the athletes. Athletes become expendable. If you don't produce, we'll just get the next one. All right? So this is a whole real big issue, this undercurrent of distrust. And then last, but definitely not least, is the lack of trust within a staff, within a coaching staff, is what people are struggling with. So we can see that trust is a really big issue. But seriously, what is it? I mean, how do we describe it? I'm curious what you think. And right now, what I'd really like you to do, because we don't have a ton of time, is I want you to think of a word that you would use to describe trust in your head. Or a short phrase. How would you describe trust? And I can guarantee you, because this isn't the first conversation that I've had about this with people, is there's at least 10 to 12 different words, at least, in this room that you would use to describe trust. Or there's 10 to 12 to 20 different phrases that you all would use to describe trust. And herein lies the challenge. How do we build trust? How do we build a trusting culture in our programs? If we can't describe it, we can't define it, how do we build it? And right now, I know I have 20 minutes to talk to you about this topic, and one thing I know about coaches is they like ideas. They want resources. They want things they can go back and play around with in their little sandbox and work through. So my goal today is to share with you some resources, get you thinking about this concept of trust. Something, by the way, we take for granted. It's like a fish in water. A fish takes water for granted until the water becomes polluted or the lake dries up. It's the same thing with us with trust. We just kind of take it for granted that it's there. We don't intentionally build it. So what I want to share with you today are some resources that I found while researching this topic of trust that you can go back with and hopefully implement and play with your staff or with your teams. One of the first I'd like to share with you is a TED radio hour, and it was called Trust and Consequences. By the way, all these resources are on your handout, so you don't have to write them down if you don't want to. I put them all on your handout for you. All right? One of the speakers on this was Simon Sinek, and if you've never listened to Simon Sinek's TED Talks on leadership, trust, how to build a trusting culture, highly recommend any of his TED Talks or any of his books, which, by the way, one book is Start with the Why. Okay? But he started talking about trust is a feeling. And, you know, I think that all of us can relate to this. Even when you were thinking of your word about how you would describe trust, I can bet that it brought up a feeling in you, because what that word described in you probably came from a memory of an experience that you had with trust. Either someone broke your trust, or somebody really trusted you, or you trusted them. They did something that was trustworthy. All right? But it's a feeling. It's do you trust the person to the left of you, and do you trust the person to the right of you? Or is it a gut feeling? I don't trust that person. I don't know why, but I just got a feeling about them. Or, man, I really trust that person. All right? So trust is built by leaders who make us feel safe. You know, it's so true. But how do they make you feel safe? He says by extending empathy and trust first. Leaders extend empathy and trust first. That's how you make them feel safe. The next one I wanted to share with you is a book I read a long time ago, but then recently, a colleague of mine read it, and she was just loving it, and it reminded me what a great book it was. And basically, Stephen Covey, he's Stephen Covey Jr., he wrote this book about organizational trust. And as you can tell, when trust is high, he says the speed of productivity goes up, right? If trust is low, then obviously the productivity goes down. When trust is high, the energy is light in an organization. People are being innovative, creative, they're trying new things, they're taking risks. When the trust is low, the energy is heavy in an organization. Things move slowly, no one's taking risk, and there's very little innovation. Okay? The second part here is something that I really do like that came out of this book. Trust is equal parts character, who you are as a person is how I'm going to define that. Character, who you are as a person. Equal parts competence. Are you good at what you do? Have you really worked hard at your craft? So, in other words, you can be a really great person, but if you don't know what you're doing, you're not going to have a lot of trust within your organization. And as a coach, one of the things I would do is I would break down competence into two parts. Competence and the X's and O's of your sport. You have to know how to teach your sport, obviously. But the other part of that competence to me is, do you know how to work with people? How do you treat people? Okay? The next piece for me, and I'm going to go back to Stephen, who did a little Brene Brown shout out, but the best idea, and I got to have a huge disclaimer here, is that I am probably president of Brene Brown's fan club. So her TED Talk on shame and vulnerability has been watched over 22 million times. 22 million times, people. And I am personally responsible for 1 million of those 22 million. And I have told that many people about her talk. But her books, Daring Greatly and Rising Strong, have changed my life tremendously on my own individual level. So I share those with you. But the talk I really want to share with you is something she did on Super Soul Sessions. And the talk is called The Anatomy of Trust. Again, it's on your resource. It's a 20-minute talk that she did. And in that talk, she introduced this concept, this acronym of braving, which is on your handout. And what I really loved about it is because she's talking about this, she's going, how can we talk about trust if we can't break it down? What does it mean when you say you don't trust me? What is it? Where are we really not trusting each other in our department? Where are we really not trusting each other on our teams? Where is trust specifically breaking down between us? Where specifically? Okay? Because we might not be that far away from trust. We might just have one thing we need to work on. Okay? So what I did was I took her acronym and I created this little handout, a checklist, which, by the way, you can go to my website and you can download it for free. But the whole acronym here, and I use this with our coaches, and I wanted them to pick one person, and I'd like you to do that in your head right now. Pick a person in your life that you struggle with trust, or that you struggle in relationship with. I want you to picture them in your mind's eye. Is it a parent? Is it a student athlete? Is it somebody on your staff? Is it your significant other? And I want you to kind of go through this checklist and either make a mental checklist, a mental check near the ones that you struggle with that person specifically. Okay? Is it around boundaries? And you can see the descriptions. We don't have time to go to each every one of them. Is it around boundaries? Look at your handout if you need to. Is it around reliability? Is it around accountability? Is it around the vault? Is it around integrity? Is it around non-judgment? Is it around generosity? And what I love about this is it really makes it jump out at me what I need to work on with this person. It gives me a roadmap to start the dialogue and how can I build trust with this person. It's the first step. It gives me that first step on the journey of building trust with that person. And the last column here, I didn't show you right away, but this is the more important one. Like we talked, the title of my talk is How to Build Team Trust. It all starts with you. And this is the one I'm really interested in when I'm working with our coaches, because I'm interested in them as an individual. I want to know, where are they struggling and trusting themselves? So, because if they don't trust themselves, their confidence is low. If your athletes don't trust themselves, their confidence is low. You could just say the confidence, self-trust, very, very similar. So with our coaches, I want to know. So right now with you, I want to know, where do you struggle in trusting yourself? Where do you specifically struggle in trusting yourself? What are you not doing to build trust within yourself? Now I'm going to go through these again. I want you to take a look at it. I want you to make a mental check near the ones that you're not doing for you. I'm not going to read them to you. You can read them yourselves. We're going to click right through them. Is it boundaries? Is it reliability? Is it accountability? Is it the vault? Is it integrity? Is it non-judgment? Or is it generosity? So I'm going to circle back to my tour right now, and I'm going to show you that self-trust was by far the biggest issue that I found when visiting with my coaches. Trusting themselves. And I know it sounds so cliche, but it's so true. That it's really hard to build trust with others when you do not trust yourself. And I understand that it's very contextual. Some of you may feel you trust yourself very much at work, but very little at home. Or very much on your job, but very little as a parent. But the reality is we have to start looking at where is that breaking down. For us, and we've talked a little bit about our life story, but I'm going to share our version and how we do it with our coaches in building that self-trust. We do start with the life story exercise. And this guy on the left here, Brian Netzler, he'd give him a little shout out. He's here today. And then he is on the left here. We just told them, we gave them instructions to do their life story, part of their pre-work before they show up in Denver with us. So Brian did a really creative thing. He took the game of life, he tore it up, and he made his own game of life storyboard about his life. I was amazed at how creative these coaches got. I highly recommend to do it with your athletes. Ask them to create their life story in pictures, in a board, and share it with each other. Very, very powerful. I really believe that every coach that comes and they sit in that chair to me are simply an accumulation of their life experiences. All right? So how do we get them in touch with those aspects of the checklist that's holding them back? In coaching, I believe our story shapes our values and our beliefs. Our values and beliefs then shape our philosophy, and then that philosophy shapes our culture. But it all starts with your story and how those stories affect your values and your beliefs. But the biggest belief that your story will shape is the belief that you have about yourself. And that's where I really want to work with coaches in building their self-trust. Is I want them to understand what is really holding them back. What is standing in between them and that trust? Okay? So when I look at I do a little exercise. I've done this with student athletes and I've done it with coaches. I walk in the room with a big bag. It's a big sack. And I walk in and I plop it down on the table, and I have all these items in my bag that reflect my life. They're little symbols. So I pull them out. One is an airplane because my dad was an airline pilot. One is a pyramid because my mother was born in Egypt. One was a whistle because I was a coach. One is a jog bra because I was an athlete. All these different symbols, and they're all like really great things, like the gift on the left side of my screen. All the gifts, all the wonderful things that come in our story bag. And then at the end I said, but wait a minute, there's something else in my bag. And I pull it out, and it's a 10-pound dumbbell. And I say to them, this dumbbell used to be 60 pounds when I was 20. But now I've worked really hard to get this dumbbell lighter. And you know how I got it lighter? By sharing it, by acknowledging it, by going to a therapist, by going to whoever would help me take responsibility for that dumbbell and shrink it. My goal is that dumbbell is 2 pounds or 1 pound by the time I die. That's my goal. But when we look at those dumbbells, and by the way, all of our coaches have it that we work, and that's who I'm trying to get to and to help them recognize. But all of your athletes have a story bag, and all your athletes have dumbbells in them. And I think many of the speakers have spoken to that. How do we connect with them and help them move through those dumbbells and shrink those dumbbells and lighten that load? Where are the dumbbells standing between you and this Maya Angelou quote? I got my own back. All right? And where is those dumbbells standing between you and trusting others and others trusting you? That's what I'm interested in. So when I look at this, I always want our coaches to think of themselves, and this is why the sun is at the last symbol in our logo here, is because I want them to be a bright light in the world of athletics. I want all of you to be bright lights in the world of athletics, and this is what I believe, is the lighter the bag, the lighter our story bag, the brighter our light. The lighter the bag, the brighter the light. And what I'd like to leave you with is our world needs your unique light. We need you to lighten your bag and brighten your light. Find your light, trust your light, and share your light. We need you. Thank you.